Today, I am lucky enough to be going for a ride on what has got to be one of the world's quirkiest public transport systems. And in 2023, it celebrates its 150th anniversary, so it's probably one of the world's oldest public transport systems too. I'm talking about the fantastic San Francisco cable cars. Hold on tight, let's go for a ride.
Cable cars might look similar to trams, but actually they're quite different. First, there's no overhead power line delivering electricity to traction motors. Instead, take a look between the running rails and you'll see a gap known as the slot. Beneath it is a steel cable constantly moving at 9.5 miles per hour. Cable cars are different from funicular railways too, because they're not permanently attached to the cable. Instead, the operator grabs hold of it to start moving and then grips it tighter to reach top speed. Also, unlike some funiculars which work on a constant gradient with a floor that's always level, the cable cars climb and descend gradients as steep as 1 in 5. In this view, looking forward over the operator's shoulders, you get a sense of what that means for passengers. Hold on tight and get ready to be cozy with your neighbour. It was those same steep hills which willed the cable cars into existence, invented by this man, Andrew Halliday, who held patents for wire rope and aerial tramways for mines. The story goes he saw horses struggling to pull rail-mounted carriages uphill on wet cobblestones. He realised how he could put his technology to use. In 1873, he opened the Clay Street Hill Railroad, which ran for half a mile and was quickly a success. And within 20 years of his first line, there was more than 53 miles of cable car track in the city.
All the way inside the cabin, behind the door. Thank you very much. Hold on.
Here's the Gripman. The name comes from the main control he works, the cable grip. Joining him is a conductor who collects fares, changes points, and also works a screw-down handbrake. To control a cable car needs strength and skill. It's a completely manual system. First, there's a foot pedal, which operates brake shoes on the front wheel set. The central lever is the grip. Pull it back to grip the subterranean cable tighter and go faster. There's a track brake, which pushes wooden blocks down onto the rails. And finally, an emergency brake, which forces a metal blade into the slot itself. Everything here would be recognisable to a Gripman from the late 1890s.
Okay, I'm going to give you some idea of what it's like to be on the cable car now. Noisy, for starters, and I can smell the grease and the oil from the grit equipment, which is right behind me, and I am sitting facing out. So as we go up and down the hills, forgive me, I'm starting to feel a little bit queasy because I'm not facing the way we're going. And also, quite a rough ride, but definitely brilliantly thrilling.
Today, there are only 3 lines left in operation, a combination of nature and politics at work. In 1906, San Francisco was hit by a devastating earthquake and firestorm, which killed thousands of people. The cable cars suffered extensive damage, and when rebuilt, the network was much smaller. Now, trams were more fashionable for urban transport, but the cable cars were still very much in their element on the city's hills. A few decades later, the threat was political. In the 1940s, the city decided buses were the way forward. But a residents' fight back, led by Friedel Klusman, saw the authorities back down. There were still changes to the cable car network, and by the 1950s, what remained is what still runs today. As they mark their 150th birthday, the cable cars carry around 6 million passengers every year, mainly tourists. One thing you should definitely check out is the Cable Car Museum. It's free to go in, it has fantastic exhibits, and it celebrates the lives of the key players in the story. One extraordinary survivor on display here, one of Andrew Halliday's original 1873 cable cars from the very first line.
I think one of the most exciting things in the museum is you can see the actual winding wheels which are driving the cable cars out on the streets today. There are 4 cables controlling different parts of the network, and they're driven by 4 motors, each 510 horsepower. You'll notice these wheels here are moving in opposite directions, and that's because the cable comes through the building in a figure of 8 arrangement, which increases the amount of contact the cable has with each of the driving wheels.
But for pure street theatre, one of the most interesting spots on the whole system is here, where the 2 Powell Street cable car lines terminate. The cars on these 2 lines can only be worked from one end, so they have to be turned around. The Gripman releases the cable and the car coasts onto the turntable. The conductor unlocks the turntable, and then the crew push the car around manually until it's facing in the right direction. Then they push the car off the table. The track actually dips down slightly, not only to help them, but to bring the grip and the cable closer together again, so the cable can be picked up, and once passengers are loaded, the car can depart on another journey. Today, the city charter actually ensures the cable cars are maintained and run, even though it's very expensive to keep them in good order. They're part of the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, nicknamed Muni, which also runs trolleybuses, more modern light rail and bus services. Currently, a ticket will cost you $8 for a single trip. But here's a tip: get yourself a Muni day pass and you can ride everything, everywhere for just $13.
So that was my day on the San Francisco cable cars. If you're coming to this part of the world, it's an absolutely must-do. 150 years young, a thrilling ride experience which must be almost identical to the one it offered back in the late 1890s when the system was at its heyday, spread all over the city. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like, subscribe and notify, and I'll see you again soon.